These 8 whale rescues will surely melt your heart. Number 8. More often than not, inexperienced baby animals are the ones that find themselves in trouble, as was the case of this baby whale. The baby humpback whale found itself stuck at a beach in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, after the high tides that had swept it to the shore failed to return it to the deeper waters. Fortunately for the whale, more than 30 tender-hearted beachgoers decided to put their fun aside and help it back into the water. Despite the situation being one that they had not prepared for, their efforts were surprisingly well coordinated. As some were pushing, others were pulling. With the help of a rope, they were able to pull the humongous whale into the water. What's even more heartwarming is that once the whale was safely back into the water and could properly swim on its own, the rescuers could not help but cheer in excitement. Number 7. In Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, the attention of a team of rescuers was drawn to a whale that was wrapped in a fishing net. The net was visibly hindering it from using its fins properly, because the net had pinned them to its body. A team of rescuers immediately sprang into action and chased it down in an attempt to free it. When the whale noticed that the rescuers were onto it, it tried to escape, making the rescue mission even harder. They eventually caught up with it, and using a hook, they managed to remove some of the nets. The whale was, however, still scared and was trying so hard to get away from them. The strong winds were also not making it any easier for the rescuers to remove the rest of the net. Regardless, the rescuers persisted until they were able to remove the rest of the net. Once the whale realized that it was free, it couldn't contain its joy, and it immediately burst out of the water. It also couldn't wait a minute longer to show off how its fins were now moving freely. Number 6. They say that a mother's love is instinctual, unconditional, and forever. Lucky for these kind-hearted people, they got to see what a mother's love looks like in the animal kingdom. When the baby whale got its tail stuck in a shark net, it was in the company of its mother, who did not, for a single minute, leave the calf stranded by itself. Instead, she stayed by its side and comforted it. When some rescuers at the Coolangatta beach got wind of the situation, they made it their mission to free the not-so-little whale. When the rescuers arrived, both whales remained calm and let the Good Samaritans do their job. According to one of the volunteers, the mom whale even slightly pushed herself into the net to keep her calf on the surface. Moments later, they were able to cut loose the 4-meter calf, and the two were able to happily continue with their journey in the South Pacific Ocean. Number 5. The average weight of a sperm whale is about 40 tons, which can be too much for a small group of people that just want to help. So when 10 sperm whales, each weighing at least 45 tons, were spotted stranded on an Indonesian beach, the volunteers knew that they had a heavy task ahead. It took the efforts of a team from the World Wildlife Fund, the Indonesian government, and the Indonesian Navy to help the whales back to the sea. Even with the water going all the way up to their necks, the volunteers worked relentlessly through the cold night to save the whales. By sunrise, they had managed to rescue 6 out of the 10 whales. Unfortunately, the other 4 died before they could have a chance to be in the waters again. Sickness, getting lost, acoustic interference, and solidarity with the first whale that got stranded are some of the reasons suspected to have caused the whales to get beached. Number 4. At Cendrawasih Bay, Indonesia, 4 giant whale sharks were swimming through the alluring waters, as is their norm, and found themselves trapped in fishing nets. The chance of the whales getting the nets off by themselves was very slim. So when a group of divers came to their rescue, they were more than grateful and gave them quite an easy time freeing them. The giant whale sharks remained calm as the divers worked on cutting the fishing nets with utmost precision, careful not to bruise the whales. The first 2 whales knew what to do when the divers created an opening for them in the nets, but the last 2 whales needed a little push from the divers to get off the nets. As a thank you, the whales lingered around the divers and allowed the divers to touch, swim, and play with them. Number 3. Back in 2018, outside Halifax, a giant whale was found beached. Within moments, the news had spread like wildfire, and more than 100 Nova Scotians showed up at the beach determined to save the helpless whale. Despite the low temperatures, the volunteers decided to brave the cold and do what they must to see the creature live. Unfortunately, the whale had incurred some injuries from thrashing in the sand. Luckily, professional marine rescuers arrived in time to save it from further pain. They quickly put it on the raft, and the volunteers formed a human chain and helped pull the raft into the water. However, the tide was still low, and the waters were still too shallow. Thankfully, after 30 stressful minutes in the water, and much to the delight of the volunteers, the whale was able to swim on its own. Number 2. A whale can only survive on the beach for no more than 2 days. This is because any whale on land suffers the risk of suffocation, dehydration, and organ failure. Fortunately for this giant humpback whale, it was lucky enough to have people come to its aid before the short window of time elapsed. More than 30 people had volunteered to work tirelessly for 2 days, just to see the whale have another chance at life. The Coast Guards on site attached a special harness to a crane, and they relied on the tides to dislodge the 10-meter-long whale. Thankfully, their efforts paid off, as the whale was able to return to the sea. Number 1. In China, an enormous sperm whale was found stranded on the sandy shore. Without wasting any more time, rescuers worked like bees and did their level best to save the 65-foot-long whale. To prevent the juvenile humpback whale from dehydration, the rescuers poured plenty of buckets of water on it. Unfortunately, the tides were too low for the volunteers to move the giant sperm whale, so they had to wait patiently for the high tides to return. 20 hours later, the high tide came, and with the help of a fleet of boats, they were able to tow the whale into the deeper waters before releasing it. According to a marine mammal expert, internal diseases, noise interference, or physiological conditions may have contributed to the whale being stranded on the beach. Which of these whale rescues was the most heartwarming?